No, you tell me what it means, and then
No, you tell me how you experience it. I'm just
Okay.
kidding. We can go either way. Honestly, what I mean is that men go first. We have been taught that men go first in systems and structures, which leads to really the breakdown of masculinity, because masculinity getting positions and platforms without suffering ends up leading them to greater degrees of ego, greater displays of selfishness, which is why we end up with people having patriarchal abuses, and then eventually this trickle down of like, now masculinity is toxic. But men were ultimately supposed to go first in service and sacrifice. Like, they are the ones who go low and choose service, choose to serve, and choose to sacrifice at all costs for the benefit of the common good. So you can do that whether you're married, you're single, you're a dad, you're the leader of you're the CEO of a company, or you're an employee at a massive corporation. It's irrelevant, because a man chooses to lay down his life for that which he is doing, that which he believes in, that which he loves.
Can you give me like a tangible?
Well, yeah, like you can't. So, okay, my marriage isn't working out. My wife's really mad at me, and I can't do anything to please her, and I blah, blah, blah. Well, that's actually an easy conversation, because I can actually walk up to my wife and go, what is it that's bothering you? Now I have two choices at that point. I can go, well, you're wrong, because that's actually, you're delusional. I'm doing that. I'm trying to prove my rightness. Or I get low, suffer, sacrifice, serve. So I go, okay, well, I'm gonna develop a lifestyle that fills in the gap that you are experiencing that you're experiencing negatively in our relationship. I am going to serve and sacrifice for the sake of this relationship, regardless of what I think I'm doing. Because if you're not experiencing it, I'm going to serve and sacrifice in that way. Same thing at our job. I've got a job. My boss goes, you're not doing this. You're blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you can do two things. Again, prove my rightness. No, I'm blah, 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 blah. Or I ask the question, what could I do that would help me fill that gap between what you're experiencing and what you want? And that's what a man can do to be able to do that. Now, he can also be a doormat and be codependent, which is like, I mean, is that okay? Like, am I all right? Am I good? No, I'm not getting my identity from it. Mm-hmm. In fact, only a courageous man with self-confidence can do those things, because I'm not finding my identity in whether or not I did it right. What I'm finding, I already know who I am. I already know what I'm capable of. I ultimately know that I'm good. I know that I'm enough. But I want you to experience my goodness. I want you to be in the covering of my goodness. I want, at work, I want you to be in the environment of my ability. I want you to be in the environment of my strength and my power, because I already know I possess it. You're not giving it to me by me doing more. That's when it's like codependent weakness and whatever. It's like, no. I'm sharing. I want you to experience my strength. I want you to experience my competency, because I know I possess it. I don't need to prove it. I'm just wanting you to experience it. And there's a gap between me offering it in a way that makes sense to you, and you being able to receive and gain from it as an individual, as work, wherever that takes me.
And I think how I've experienced that, you have always wanted to, like, it's in your nature. You're like a servant-hearted person, and you've always wanted me to know that I was cared for. We've been married. How many years have we been married?
23.
23. It changes every year. I always forget. 23 years. So in the beginning of our marriage, I think you didn't know how to do that. So I didn't know how to do anything either. We were both figuring it out. But you would try to care for me in ways that didn't.
Well, I think everyone enters into marriage trying to love the way that they were taught.
Right.
And it never fully works out.
Right. So you would like send me flowers, and I'm not a flower person. I'm like, please, I really don't care about flowers, you know? Yeah. And what I really need you to do is, well, I didn't have the language for this, but what you have done for me that has allowed me really to walk in a feminine energy that I didn't even know was possible. Because of course, me growing up in a home without a dad, I've had to operate in kind of some masculine ways to care for myself and to protect myself and to provide for myself. But you going first in really creating a space of containment for me, of provision and of safety, has allowed me to feel like I can fully rest in my own femininity. And I think that, now I'm using like different language than what you're...
Well, no, I think what you're saying is when a man comes into the fullness of his masculinity, a woman can finally come into the fullness of her feminine strength, her power, her energy,
But it was
whatever the
because
language
you
is
went
that you guys everybody's
first.
most comfortable
You know what I mean?
with.
Like
Yeah.
you went first in
Right,
that.
that's my point. Yeah.
And going first in even provision, right? Like
Yeah.
I've always known that you will work 10 jobs to make sure I can stay home with the kids.
Yeah.
Like whatever
Yes.
you have to do, I don't ever have to worry about that because you go first when it comes to the finances. You also go first when it comes to like I'm a woman, and as masculine as I want to be, and because I love that idea of what in my head is strong.
Yep.
For many years, like what in my head is strong. So I didn't, I for a lot of years disassociated from my emotions because I did not have a safe place to have them. But I do. So they would come out and I would have times where I just emotionally would vomit on you, and you would remain solid for me.
Yeah.
You didn't get dramatic with me. You didn't fall into the drama.
Yeah.
You didn't expect me to like get back in a line really quick. You would really create a space for me where I can have all of my emotions. I could express them. You'd create space for me to do that. And then that was it. Even
Well,
if it,
yeah.
this is the thing. I knew it affected you,
Yes.
but you didn't let me know the depths of how much it affected you.
Men, if you're enjoying these videos, I want you to like and subscribe right now so that we can make more content just like this. And if you are interested, if you're a man and you are interested in growth and transformation, you want to become the husband that your wife desires and the father your kids deserve, as well as the leader the world so desperately needs, then I want you to go to thisisthefight.com. We give you a free 7-day trial of our entire platform, our community, all the tools. And at the end of your first 7 days, you open up and unlock, if you've done the work, open up and unlock a free 15-minute call with me, and we will help project the next 30 days of your life. What do you need to do next? What are the next steps? And if you join our platform and you don't like it, don't worry. We offer the fight guarantee. What is that? It means after 37 days of doing the work, if you don't feel more empowered to be the man you were created to be, in order to be the husband you were meant to be, the father you were meant to be, the leader you were meant to be, the businessman you were meant to be, if you don't feel more empowered to do so, we're not only going to give you your money back, we'll give you $100 for your time. So before we check out the rest of the video, you need to go visit thisisthefight.com. I'll see you there. Men want to go to war for something.
Right.
The men want to fight. They want to know that they're fighting for a just cause. Like, men want this. They deeply desire to fight for something righteous and good, because again, it amplifies their own goodness and proves again that they're enough. And I think that there's so much of men who want to fight for something but don't know how to fight for this because they've never been taught how to take a hit in this way. So like, yeah, I have guns. Yeah, I do. I go and do jujitsu. I go and do, I can fight, with my bare hands. Well, that's all great. We need that. We need that kind of masculine. That's that warrior energy. But that lover part of a man is the same energy displayed differently. So like, I can go to war, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do all the tough stuff, I'm going to go hunting and camping and do all those things. If I can't apply that same aggressive, like bare bones, take a hit, choose to suffer mentality when it comes to dealing with my wife, it's not really true. It's just true in one area. So it's true in the area where I'm like, I'm going to go, be in the cold and I'm going to go do whatever when it comes to camping or be uncomfortable in that situation. But it's because I'm getting something out of it. I know what I'm getting. Where on the other side, when we do it this way, most men don't know what they're getting out of it. And what they're getting out of it is a woman who knows she's strong, a woman who will desire you, a woman who wants to be intimate with you, a woman who's now able to focus on her children and not being her husband, a woman that actually feels like she's going to be protected and covered and safe and be chosen. And most of the time, men men don't know how to do that. Like we always just say, like the very simple phrase is just men need to learn how to take a punch. And they like are trying to learn how to take a punch physically, but don't know how to take a punch emotionally. So when their wife pushes back against them, they lose their mind. And in all honesty, what it proves more than anything is that a man doesn't know who he is. Like he doesn't, when you can only take a hit at your identity and your masculinity and survive if you know you already possess it before the hit happens. And if you take a hit from your wife or someone you value or someone in a position of power or someone that's, your boss or whatever, and they hit you at that place of identity, that place of connection, that place of of competency, where you feel like you're doing good, and you're insecure at all, the whole house of cards falls. The whole house of cards falls. That's why like a man will experience it at work and then bring it home. So because I got hit at work, now it's okay to get hit at work and be sad about it and be like, dude, that freaking sucks. You can bring that home into a safe space, into a relationship. You can come home and go, like, wow, today really sucked at work. But to bring it home and that insecurity at home, so then the insecurity multiplies because I already felt insecure here. I already felt insecure at work. I already felt insecure in my position over here or my competency over here. All of a sudden, I feel all thrown off and it messes up every relationship, every connection I have because I don't know who I am and I don't know what I'm capable of. Again, I keep saying it, but it's like every man's biggest issue at his core is the fact that he doesn't believe he's good and he doesn't know that he's enough. And if a man knows who he is, he knows what he's capable of and what he brings. And that's really that's different for every man. It's not like,
well,
okay, here's a one size fit all.
How do you find this out?
The way you find out your identity, is by going back. So I always say self-confidence comes through self-discovery. So if I'm going to find my identity, if I'm going to find self-confidence, find out who I am, I have to go and I have to excavate my story. I have to go and deal with the things that have most defined who I am. Positive and negative, but mostly the negative are the ones that we bury. So we usually amplify the good ones and live them out. They're usually somewhere in your life already. But for the places that have actually hurt me, I need to go back and go, wow, what hurt me? Because I'm living from those false identities. And I've built either one of two things, which for me, so I default to one side. There's either the imposter or the ideal, and the idealist or the imposter. And the imposter is, I'm going to fake this thing because I want to prove to you I'm good enough and I am enough. So I'm going to fake my identity by proving because I don't believe it. So deep insecurity, all of those things.
You mean I'm going to overperform?
Yeah, I'm just going to overperform everywhere I go. Mm-hmm. Now the other side is the idealist. So now I'm living in the ideal, which is just perfectionism. So it's performance and perfectionism, right? So one, I'm just going to double down on performance, wear the mask, perform really well. The other side is I'm going to build an ideal version of myself, and I'm going to live in perfectionism. And if anything falls below that idealism and that perfectionism, I just sabotage it, or I think the whole thing is shit. The whole thing's gone to crap because it's not right? So, and they're all just balls we're juggling, balls we're juggling, but neither of them are real. Mm-hmm. Neither of those, the ideal or the imposter, are real. They are just fake versions of my life that I'm trying to utilize to keep my job, keep my family, keep my marriage, keep this version of my identity. And I have to go and I have to rip those apart and begin the work one little story at a time to figure out who I really am. Because if you don't do the work of self-discovery and build self-confidence from the ground up, you'll end up finding your identity. I want to say it was Noun or one of those guys that said that that the immature form of identity is what I do, what I have, and what others think of me. Mm-hmm. What I do, what I have, and what others think of me. And the true form of identity is what I believe and what I value. So what I believe and what I value are actually what make me me. That's what makes me who I am. What do I really believe? And those beliefs dictate how I enter into this relationship, how I enter into my job, how I enter into a relationship with God and church and that whole piece of my life, that faith component of my life. All of that connects to what I believe and value. And if I don't know what I believe and value, which is the work of self-discovery, mm-hmm. then I can never be confident because I'm constantly trying to hide what I really believe. Because if I really believe that if I do anything hard, I'm going to fail, then my value system becomes comfort. So now I have a belief system that says if I do anything, I'm going to fail. So I need to get to everything that's comfortable and easy as quick as possible. So now all my behaviors are predicated on that belief and value system. And if I don't ever dismantle those, then everywhere in my life, I'm going to make sure that my behavior keeps up my ability to engage with what's comfortable and easy. I'm never going to have a hard conversation with you. I'm never going to stir anything up at work, but I'm also not going to get promoted. We're not going to really have intimacy because I'm not going to have any hard conversations. So it's going to be very surface level, and I'm going to feel like I'm not getting enough out of this relationship. You're going to feel disconnected. All because I believe if I do anything that risks, I'm going to fail. Therefore, my value system becomes comfort and ease. And my behaviors all show up from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think I see this in people's homes where then everything's put on the woman.
Right.
To now engage the conversation,
right.
to engage the man's emotions,
right.
And now she's walking in a role that really she never wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we don't want an emotional man. We want a man who can identify his emotions, but we don't want an emotional man. In fact, I would say it this way, like this is a kind of a tangent, but I can bring it back, it is really amazing that men want to fix. It's actually super awesome because a man who wants to fix the relationship has value for it.
And we as women, we criticize the hell out of men.
Right.
Don't try to fix it.
Right, because that actually shows the value, because a man is action driven, not emotion driven. Mm-hmm. And when a man can put some action to it, he feels effective. It makes him feel confident and he's going to prefer you. It's not, and now I understand where the dysfunction can come, because all I'm trying to do is, I don't really want to engage with your emotion. I just want to pretend. Right. I understand where it can go wrong, but him showing up is actually really beautiful. And for a woman to engage with that and say, oh, I know you're trying to fix it by doing this. Really, what I need is this. So I'm so grateful you're trying to fix this. But I don't need you to do all that. What I really need is this, because I do want to be connected with you. And all of a sudden we're learning from one another. But the point is going back to what we were saying, is that we end up not knowing how to do those things as men, because we're telling men they need to be more emotional. They need to be more like a woman in order to engage their world. When they don't need to be more emotional, they need more confidence. Mm-hmm. See, and I think that's where it starts to fracture, because we're like, no, we need men to be more emotional. That'll fix it. No. We need men who do self-discovery so that they have self-confidence, so they know who they are and can enter into their life with authenticity and vulnerability. When they do that, then they can engage the conversation here, and it's not all on the wife. Because that ends up being, like you said, what ends up happening. Like, well, now it's all on you. Like, the whole home, the relationship, it's all on you. Good, bad, indifferent, it all rides on you. When it doesn't. It actually is, I mean, we say this all the time, marriage isn't 50-50, it's 100% and 100% at all times, in every season. And so it's like, I have to show up. And that means if I don't have the right tools to be able to do this, I can't wait for you to do it, which goes back to the man going first. I can't wait for you to engage the conversation. I have to engage the conversation. I have to go, babe, I know something's off. I don't know what it is. I don't know I don't know how to enter into this, making you feel cared for and seen. Can you help me understand where you're coming from? And then, again, we've said this already, but as a man, my job isn't to figure it out. It's not to make it better. It's not to explain myself like we were talking about earlier. I'm not explaining to my boss, explaining to you, explaining to the church. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to learn. And if I go from trying to prove to trying to learn, I'll always become better. I'll become better at my job. I'll become better at any sort of area of growth that I want in my life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. I'm going to grow if I remain teachable and I'm constantly learning. I don't want to prove that I did this right. I want to learn where I still lack so I can become better. And that, again, that takes a man who has a degree of self-confidence, which he can only get from self-discovery. So it requires the work of going, where did I lose my confidence in me? Where did I try to be somebody else or become something else that's not really who I am? Like, nobody should be trying to be anybody else. Like, I used to say this all the time when we were like leading worship all the time. I'm like, the world doesn't need another Jesus culture. The world doesn't need another Bethel. The world doesn't need another Hillsong. The world doesn't need any of those. It already has them. What it needs is you. Your world, your community, your marriage, your family doesn't need whatever hero you're looking up to. It needs you. Now that hero might be able to teach you something because they're further along, so you can listen to their podcast, read their book. That's all awesome. But at the end of the day, what your family needs is you, not the hero version of you or the version of you that looks like the hero you're looking up to. It needs you, authentically, fully you, confident you in that space. That's what your family and community need more than anything. And that's a long road.
So I remember for years, like, you are an emotional guy by nature. Mm-hmm. So I think you had maybe a little step up in being able to tap in and engage your emotions.
Yeah.
But I remember for years when we first got married, we would come together, you know, in these like, we both have these emotional tirades towards each other. Who's going to, you know, be able to say the most words.
Yeah.
And I think we both realized one of like the best advice that my aunt ever gave to me. She's like my go-to whenever I need good advice. She told me like, oh, you want to have a good marriage, get good friends. And there is something to that for as a woman to go, oh, it's actually easier for me to come to you, number one, if I have had talked this out with my best friend.
Absolutely.
And I can come to you and you're maybe more problem solving it, which I can handle more because I've already received the let me flesh it all out. But for a man, I remember we you know, would get in these places and I was like, you need to find a group of friends. Like you need some friends to process this with, because I can't process everything with you.
Right.
So tell me about
because that was like, I mean, even as an entrepreneur, I mean, our work, our life, our ministry, our faith, our family, I mean, everything is just hyper enmeshed with our situation. Mm-hmm. And I think most men in the midst of conversations are trying to figure out, again, because I think men have a deep belief that they're not good or they're not enough. So what they're doing in the midst of conversations like that are they're attempting to find their goodness and prove that they're not bad. Mm. So they're not ultimately even trying to fix the relationship, although that's kind of the context. Mm-hmm. I think most men are trying to prove they're not bad. And they're trying to process, like, because, and I can say that for me, when we were doing those things back in the day, it immediately was impossible for me not to hear any language you were bringing that I was not a complete and total failure. Mm-hmm. There was no version where you couldn't have told me different. Like, oh, you're just bad. Mm-hmm. And you're not good. And you're not doing this right. And you're a failure. And you're not enough. And all those things. And the men that I've talked to, most of them fall into that camp. Which also, by the way, makes them deeply emotional. Because they're feeling all that emotion, but they don't even really register it as emotion. Mm-hmm. They don't even register it as like something helpful because they're just so busy trying to defend themselves from the fact that they're failures. And so the argument ends up becoming, no, I'm right, simply for the sake of I'm not bad. I'm not a failure. I actually really love you. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Is really the language of men most of the places in their life. Because they don't know what to do next, which is just be honest. Just be honest with it. And I think I had to learn really, really hard through our situations, whether it was Geneva or whether it was the fall apart, like our marriage falling apart in 2010 and the conversations we had with all that stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to go find Jake. Like I don't just need friends. I need Jake. Who is Jake? And then once I know who Jake is, then Jake can find a group of friends to process this. I did a lot of journaling, so it was like, you know, for me that became that was like my group of friends in my little isolation, the part of me that's, you know, introvert, and like writing into my journals gave me a sense of processing, but it doesn't give me reflection back, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it helped me find at least that first semblance of myself, so that when as I started finding friends and building deep friendships, I could give this to them and they could be a sounding board back. Men have had this their whole lives, throughout history. Like they had tribe, they had lodges, they had bars. They would go from work to the bar, and it's like, oh, I'm going to get a drink before I come home. Now, again, there's all these sloppy examples, but I'm like, no, there actually is something beautiful to that. Because the way that I describe it to other men is your shadow had a place to reveal itself, so you didn't have to bring it home. You could just be you at home. You could actually be this authentic version of yourself in the midst of your relationship with your spouse and your family. Because that shadow part of you, that repressed side of you, that part of you that's like, I'm going to go nuts, or I'm going to say something inappropriate. There was space for that for men. For centuries, there's been space like that. And we ended up calling that patriarchal and toxic and all these things. And I'm not saying every example of it's good, but what I am saying is there was space for men to be men around other men so they could figure out what was appropriate around men. I mean, even when you watch shows like Mad Men or whatever it is, it's like, and even older shows, they would do crazy things when it's all just men. And the moment a woman walks up, everyone stands, they straighten up, they take off their hats, they don't say any swear words, and they're like, ma'am, it's nice to see you. There's something beautiful about that. When a man knows how to do that and become a gentleman because he recognizes there's a different way to approach the feminine, that is super healthy. Super, super healthy in the midst of a group of friends, in the midst of a group of men. So when I find myself, I can bring myself into those relationships as men so that we can work through some of our crap together. And then I get to bring the best version of myself home to you. That's ultimately the way I think it works. I do this self-work, I do this relational work with men, and all of that is like this iron sharpening iron. It's this sanding off of the rough edges. It's the pounding out as a blacksmith takes a piece of raw metal and makes it into a sword or makes it into a weapon. That's what I get to bring home. That's the part that matters, is I'm being shaped and formed into what I need to be in this house for my marriage and my family. That's the benefit of a man knowing who he is and bringing that into a group of friends, because that is where it's shaped into what I bring here. And ultimately, then I can learn how to love because I'm bringing my confident self here. I'm able to sit here in confidence. Like, oh, okay, I can sit in this conversation. I can take a hit. Oh, yeah. The guys told me that. Yeah, that's right. I actually don't do this well. Okay, now she's telling me. Okay, that's obviously accurate. So let's have that conversation. You know, does that make sense? I don't know if that's...
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, how do you cultivate that? How do you even find that?
No, that's what we're building with the fight. That is the tribe. Like, we're building a place for men to be men. Like, that's why it's a little messy. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be. You know, I was just on a podcast today, actually, and we talked about this, and it's so hard because everyone's trying to present well. And I do it all the time. I just want to present well. I want everything to be perfect. I want it all to fit in. I want it all to be right. I want it all to look good. And it's just like we live in this world where if it's not perfectly curated to present our best selves, we end up missing out. If that's all we're doing, we miss out on the beauty of what it means to be human. And I feel like with the fight and what we started even in the garage at our house and things like that, it was like this messy expression of just like, okay, let's just let it be what it is. And then create containment and care for that. And I don't, that's why I'm like, you know, at the end of the day with the fight stuff and even the manual we're developing to help people build fight clubs, it's like, no, we want you to just get some men together and just figure out what it looks like and be messy. And then when you take some hits at home or you take some hits at work or life brings you some hits you weren't expecting, you have a place to bring that without having to curate how you say it or what it sounds like. You just get to bring it. And in doing so, you find out the places you've been hurt prior to that moment. They reveal themselves naturally through that kind of care and containment. And you can go back to a place of remembering who you really were and what you're really capable of. And if you can do that in the midst of men, like you'll be able to do that at your house in ways that I don't think most men ever experience. I mean, very few men I've met have ever been able to find that, just especially on their own.
So what do you say to the man who isn't comfortable expressing his emotion, doesn't know, you know, when we picture like, oh, the ultimate masculine men, they're just stoic and they don't have any emotions, and
Yeah.
what do you say to them?
Not having an emotion is still having an emotion. Like stoicism and to be stoic actually still costs your body something. So what is it costing you? Like, that would be the conversation for me if I was dealing with a man who's like, well, he's just not emotional. That's not true about any man I've ever met. He's just putting it somewhere else. There's no man on planet Earth who just has zero emotion. Unless now you're dealing with psychotic, right? Like, at that point, you're psychotic. If you can detach that far from your emotion, you probably killed somebody in your lifetime or done something really horrible. But for the most part, we're just dealing with men who are putting their emotions somewhere else, and all we're doing is helping them uncover where they're putting it so that they can figure out better ways to express it. And to be honest with you, I'm not even saying it's not even healthy for me to bring, like you said earlier, to bring all my emotion here. Most women are like, oh, that would be so great.
Yeah, until it happens.
God, that's so untrue. That's bullshit. There's no woman who's like, man, I just wish my husband would bring all their emotions to me. You do not want everything that's going on up here.
Nor do you want everything that's going on.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
the point is being able to do some of that self-discovery on their own, and then being in a tribe of men. Their emotions get uncovered. What they've done with their emotions, it gets uncovered. Where it's showing up in their life and bleeding out, it shows up. You can't hide it. Like, we've been around tons of men, like I love this one guy, he's the best. And when he's been a part of Man Talk Mondays and come to a fight weekend, he's hilarious. But he wants to act hilarious. And it's like, at some point you go, hey, you don't have to do that with us. And he knows it. He sees it, but it's if I do this, I can cover up this. So if I go into heavy work mode, I can ignore the fact that I'm sad. I can ignore the fact that I'm whatever, fill in the blank. There's all these emotions that they're going somewhere. No man is emotionless. And then all we have to do is uncover it. That's the entire job of what the fight does and what a marriage brings to a man. It's like, yeah, you can do this with your wife. You can. It's a hard road. And I think we did that because I didn't have anybody else at that time. I had a couple of friends, but we weren't in the same positions we are now. That is that is a way harder hit because it is such a high degree of vulnerability when you're doing that with your wife. Because to your wife, every man wants to come across as perfect. I think a man came to Brene Brown and said that at one of her things, vulnerability and all these things. And a man walked up to her and was like, that's all great, but you do not want that from a man. My family needs me to stay on my white horse. And if I come down from that horse, they'll kill me. Like, not unintentionally, because I cannot show weakness. And so I think that there is this, I don't think that's 100% accurate, but what I do believe is that it is a way harder space if you haven't done this work anywhere else to all of a sudden try to do it with your spouse as if it's going to go well. It's like, no, you have to have some ability to take a hit, to go, hey, I know I'm not doing it well. Can you tell me where that is?
So then what do you do on the opposite spectrum of that, where you have a man who has a ton of emotion and who is operating?
Hold your shit together, man. Like, at the end of the day, men with other men provide a tempering in whatever direction they need in order to hold that masculine line. That's what men do for one another. If a man comes in, he's hyper emotional and there's half the room is holding it together, that man immediately knows that this is not appropriate. And a man who shows up and is not emotional at all, and you've got another half of the room that's like really connected to their emotion and tearing up every time somebody else shares something, all of a sudden you're like, I'm not attached to that. And men in a group, in a tribe like that, self-regulate. They really do. It's like, hey man, we don't do that. A great example of this is we were at a fight weekend and men are sharing some stuff. It's deep stuff. It's really beautiful stuff, but a dude's on his phone. Dude's like on his phone. Like 2 sessions of that, he's on his phone. And the leaders come to me and they're like, dude, what the hell? Like, somebody needs to get this guy off his phone. And I'm like, and I said, what I believed, what is a culture defends itself. So in a culture of masculinity, when we're really holding the bar high for masculinity, it will defend itself. I said, just give it space. It will be fine. The next session, we all get together, another man starts sharing, and the guy gets on his phone, and a guy in the back is like, hey, before we keep going, I'm sorry, can I stop? Like, dude, get off your phone. Like, I need you. You need to get off your phone. It's disrespectful what you're doing. You could tell he had held on to it.
He had 2 sessions of rage.
Yeah, he had built it up. But I was like, and the guy was like, oh, dude, well, I'm just, I'm doing work and I have ADD. He just gave off a litany.
Right.
But all of a sudden, it's like, there's gonna be a fight, but it's okay. Like on the playground, you don't stop the fight. You just let it fight. This is how boys do it. Mm-hmm. They go, you're throwing off, and you're not gonna tell me what to do. And then eventually, what does it do? Settles down. It's like, dude, sorry, I came off strong. And the other guy's, no, you're right. I should be off my phone. Well, of course, because that's how it works with men. Like, that's the way it's supposed to be.
We're getting rid of that.
Yes.
A lot of that because of the over-feminization of our culture. I see this with raising the boys. I lived, in the tension of that, where you want there was a part of me that I knew boys roughhouse, they play, they're hard on each other.
Yeah.
And you gotta let them just be boys and be rough and tough. But I really felt the weight and the pressure around me to feminize them, to go, no, play nice. Don't say something mean. Da, da, da. As a matter of fact, it's a reason, one of the paramount reasons why I ended up homeschooling our kids is because our youngest is very boy.
Yeah.
He's just extremely male, and he didn't work in school.
But you said this is the message we're giving to men and wondering why they lost their strength, which is just be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice. Which men, so this is the hard part, because what women don't understand, and maybe what culture itself doesn't understand, is when you tell a man to be nice, he defines nice as good and then defaults to nice as a form of goodness so that you'll accept him. Yet a man has to remain dangerous. I mean, that is Jordan Peterson 101, right? Like, it's my favorite quote. I know it's overplayed, but it's like, no, you need to be a monster. You need to be the fullest form of monster that you can possibly be. And then learn how to control it. We use the word temper. Mm-hmm. Learn how to temper it into something useful. You don't just get to run around your life being a monster. But if you define any form of monster in you as bad, all you're doing is making the most giant shadow that you cannot carry. It eventually will eat you alive. The very monster you're trying to tame out of your life will eventually devour you as a man. And it will devour your family, it will devour your kids, it will devour your job, it will devour your faith, it will devour everything if you don't give it a space. Because the goal is not to ignore it or kill it. The goal is to temper it into something useful. Because your family needs you to be a monster. Like, some guy comes and attacks your family or breaks into your home, are you gonna be nice? Like, is that the goal? Mm-hmm. Now you defined all of your goodness around being nice. And someone comes at your kids, comes at your wife, comes into your home. You want to be nice? Mm-hmm. Is that what you want? Like, let's just take it as a nation. Another nation's coming and attacking, and it's like, well, they have just as much of a right to be here as we do. It's like, no, we defend our territory. No, we defend our space. We defend our identity. We defend who we are by standing firm when everybody else. That is the same aggression. That is the monster. I don't have to attack you. I don't have to tell you who I am. My life will tell you who I am. I'm not going to bow down to this thing. I'm not going to give into this thing because you told me that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing life the way it makes you comfortable. I'm not doing it. That's a man who has fully embraced the monster that he could be and has learned how to temper it into something useful in his life. That man will always do great things.
Well, also, I think a man who isn't able to tap into that defaults to hidden sins like pornography.
That's right. Well, that's why we go and have a million conversations with men. It's like, well, what are you dealing with? Well, I'm dealing with anger. I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with that. And it's like, okay, but let's get to the root. Okay, well, I'm dealing with pornography. Okay, I'm actually like...
Right, because there's no place for them to release out to any of their masculinity out into society.
That is the monster devouring them.
Right, it becomes internalized.
That's exactly right.
And it has to find a release.
There's no version of a man that shouldn't be aggressive. Mm-hmm. Every man should be aggressive. Every man should be aggressive, but not become violent. That's maturity. Every
Define
man,
the difference, because I think people have a really hard
they have an absolutely hard time
seeing the difference.
Aggression is the same creative force that promotes innovation. Aggression means I see a wall, I'm pushing through it. Aggression is the stoic phrase of the obstacle is the way, Ryan Holiday's book. The obstacle is the way. The thing that is hindering me, what is Marcus Aurelius says, I'm going to misquote it so somebody else can quote it right, but the thing that is hindering the way is actually the way. Like there's some version of this in Marcus Aurelius Meditations. The thing that is hindering the way is the way. Another way to look at this is the very pain that you think is hindering you is the very pathway to your promise. There is no version of a man not using that energy, that aggression to go, I see it and I'm not stopping because it hurts. That is the very best thing a man can bring to culture. I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I mean, that is quintessential Christianity 101. The entirety of our faith is founded on masculine energy that was willing to die for the sake of Christ. That is a truly masculine trait. If I sign up for Christianity, I'm saying, yes, I'm willing to die. That was the original. That's why passion originally meant the death of Christ, right? The sufferings and death of Christ, the crucifixion of Christ. This reality for us is aggression. I'm not going to quit simply because you want me to. I'm not going to stop simply because your opinion of me changes. That is the goal. Right over there, I'm going after it. Here's a whole other way. This is aggression. Aggression is your wife says, I'm done with you, it's over, it's finished. And you go, I will never leave you, I'm coming after you. I'm going to choose you for the rest of my life because you're my bride. That's what I'm going to do. That's aggression. That's if you don't have that aggressive energy, you're going to be like, well, I guess it's over. Like hell, it's over. Yet the crazy part is those same dudes be like, well, I guess it's over. My relationship's done. Are the same guys who are like, it's fourth quarter, guys. All right, guys, get the ball. We're going to throw it down the field. We're going to like, they're the same dudes who show up to the football game and are like, it's not over until the buzzer rings. No, we're going to get in there. We're going to kick ass. We're going to do all these things. That's all aggression. That's all. They're just applying it to the wrong spaces, so it shows up as destructive instead of constructive. So it tears apart things because you don't know how to fight for something, so you fight against something. All of that masculine energy is what pushes the story forward. It pushes the narrative forward, and men have to lay hold. That's part of the monster. That's part of understanding your bigness in the world and carrying it nobly. Now, because the reason we talk a ton about even chivalry, right? Like we use that word a lot. Like it's one of our 7 virtues is to be chivalrous and to act like in a chivalric way, which is what I was talking about with the gentleman earlier. They're saying all this shit, talking all these things, and the moment a woman walks in, it's like, oh yes, I know it. It's that same energy tempered into something that moves the story forward is what we're really looking at. That's chivalrous. I'll go to war against an entire kingdom for the sake of a maiden. I'll go to war against an entire army by myself because I'm going to fight for what's right when everybody else tells me it's wrong. I'm going to stand, I will not stand by in silence when it is unjust. Like those are traits that are so purely and beautifully masculine that are lost when we're trying to get men to be nice. And it's great, that's convenient. For the moment, it's convenient. And the thing, and we talk about this a lot, is that that's cute when you're dating. But ultimately, long term, it won't help a marriage. It's going to destroy a marriage long term. A guy who's purely just nice, that'll ruin a marriage. It seems super cute when you're dating because he's so in touch. He's so nice. It's like, that's cute. But you're not going to want that years down the road when you need somebody who's going to step up and pay the bills. When someone who needs to step up and take care of the family and all hell breaks loose against your house. Yeah. Like when shit goes sideways, who's the man in this house? And right now we live in a culture where the women are like, I'll take that. I'll take and run with that ball. And what's crazy about that is women then in the church, if we bring it back even into the church, it's like, yeah, Deborah. Like, Deborah, she went after it and was like, she's like, we want a warrior spirit like Deborah. I want to walk like Deborah. Deborah herself in scripture says, to the man, to the leader, to the person who was supposed to do this, a man, you will lose any ability to use this for your story. You lose any right because you're making me do what you should be doing. Deborah only exists because a man wouldn't stand up.
Oh.
You can't use Deborah as an example of the warrior spirit of women because she wouldn't have even needed to do anything if a man just did what the hell he was supposed to do. Stand the hell up. Do your job. I don't give a shit if you're afraid. You have to do something. And in scripture, that is when a woman has to take a man's place, when a woman has to become a warrior, it is simply because a man didn't do his job. A man didn't step into the place he was meant to step up into. That is his job. That is his role. To know how to go to war, how to temper that aggression to something useful that moves the family story forward, his story forward and his family's story forward, so that there's a legacy of being able to know how to walk in this thing long term and live. He can leave it as a legacy because he lived it out over the course of his lifetime. And men need that energy. And now, some women hear that and all they can hear is violence because that's what they've known. And that I have a ton of sympathy for. So I get that. I'm not belittling someone's abuse or control or manipulation. I'm not belittling any of that. That is a man who is immature and he's chaotic. He hasn't tempered that. That is not what I'm talking about. That is violence. And when a man doesn't temper his aggression, his God-given aggression that comes with being a man, every single man, it will turn in unhealthy ways. Unhealthy ways in violence against others, or, you see this in men all the time, violence against themselves. And violence against themselves means like, let's take ourselves all the way into emotion and femininity as I can as a man to erase every piece of aggressive masculinity I've ever experienced. And that's a part of their own immaturity and their own brokenness.
Well, and I think you see it equally with women who step into the place of like, oh, I'm gonna stand up and be the masculine one here, and I'm gonna be the defender. I'm gonna be all of this, and they're annihilating men. So we're doing it to each other,
right? And the hard part is like, yes, women, please don't do that. That's not it. Like nobody. You are never gonna get your husband to act like a man by demasculating him.
Or any man in your
it's just
around.
Not, right. And also, by the way, you're not going to find a husband by telling everybody how self-sufficient you are.
Yeah.
Just FYI, young ladies that are listening to this, like you're not going to find, no man's attracted to that. I can take care of myself. I don't need anybody. Okay, well, you're definitely not going to need me. Why am I going to show up? Because men want something to fight for. So this like self-sufficient, like I can do anything I want. I can do it probably better than you, and I don't even need you. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm self-sufficient, blah, blah. Well, it's like, no man is like, whoa, that's so attractive. No, what a man is attracted to is a woman who's tender, who wants to be a mother, who actually carries her strength. There's no weakness in that. She carries that as as powerful. Like, I can't wait to serve a family and give an environment to a family where the lineage and legacy of that family knows that a woman stood to take care of it while the husband went out to work and provide and care